Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Welcome to all the new subscribers. On this channel we talk about dividend growth investing, hence the name. The audience that I'm talking to are really new investors, newer beginner investors. It doesn't matter your age group, you could be in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, looking to grow passive income through dividend growth investing. And in today's video, I want to talk about taxes. Taxes are not the most exciting thing to talk about with the whole trade wars going on. I mean, a tariff is nothing more than just a tax on an imported good. But I think it's really important that we understand how our investments, how our dividends are taxed, and that's what we're going to talk about. That's what we're going to talk about today. When I think about taxes, or the money that I'm paying in taxes on my dividends, it really makes me think about this.
And it's gone! This line is for people who have money with the bank only. Please step aside.
All right. So in this video, I'm going to talk about 5 things. I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to timestamp everything in the comments and in the description below. So if you want to skip ahead, maybe you're just interested in one specific section, you can go ahead and you can skip ahead by clicking on the timestamps below. But first off, I want to talk about why you should care about how your dividends are taxed. Second, I want to talk about what are qualified dividends. You may have heard of the concept before. And thirdly, what are non-qualified or ordinary dividends? And how are international stocks taxed as the 4th thing. And then the 5th thing, I want to share how I select stocks based on dividend tax. And I'm going to actually go back in here towards the end of the video. I'm going to go into M1 Finance, as you can see on your screen here, and share with you all how I've selected individual holdings based off of the tax implications. And a lot of that will make more sense towards the end after we've understood, okay, what are qualified dividends, non-qualified, and international dividends, how they're all, taxed. So to start off, why you should care about taxes or how your dividends are taxed. I think this is really important. So after so back in the 1970s, 1971, President Nixon, he took us off the gold standard. And since then, the U.S. government, we've been printing money nonstop. So we've gone off of the gold standard where, what we've been doing for centuries to now where we're just playing a game. This is the game of money that we're all playing here since the 70s. And to get ahead, I think really one of the most important things that you can do as a new investor is understand the tax implications that come with your investments. It really can diminish your total returns if you don't understand the tax implications. If you're just pulling the trigger and you're purchasing a stock or an investment just because it looks great and not fully understanding what the tax implications are, you can really have diminishing returns. We talk a lot about return on investment on this channel, and this is something that's definitely going to impact your return on investment. So this is one of the reasons why you should understand, why you should care, especially if you're first starting out, understanding how that's going to impact you come tax season. And then, anything that you can save. I think, thanks to the power of compounding, this is really where you can grow your net worth, where you can start putting your money to work for you instead of just having to give it all away to the government because maybe you've taken a less advantageous route in investing in one holding over the other. So that's one of the reasons why you should definitely care about the tax implications that come into this. And in this video, I'm not going to go in and write a dissertation or a huge paper around the different tax implications. I'm not a financial advisor. These are just tips that I share with my family members, with my friends, with my wife who's just starting out to invest and to help her understand what are those implications that come with investing and how and why they're important. So the next thing that I want to talk about are qualified dividends. Now, qualified dividends fall under your capital gains tax rate. So if you're in the United States, this is something that you definitely have to understand. On this channel, I'm not talking about buying and selling, flipping a house, buying a stock low, selling it high. That would fall under the the short-term and long-term capital gains. Really, what I'm focusing on are the long-term capital gains that you get with buying, holding, dividend-paying companies. Hopefully that dividend is growing. That's what we talk about on this channel, is the growth aspect of the dividends that we're investing in, or the companies that we're investing in. So a qualified dividend, this is really a gift that the government is giving us as investors that invest into qualified businesses. Now, a qualified business, we're going to, a qualified dividend, we're going to get a much lower rate depending on your tax bracket. Now, everyone is different, and we're going to talk about that in the next section here in just a few minutes about non-qualified or ordinary income. This is not your ordinary income. This is capital gains, and capital gains are taxed lower than ordinary income. So, for example, ordinary income, you're working your 9-to-5 job, you're getting your W-2, you're paying taxes on that. Capital gains would be, you're selling a stock, you're getting a dividend, etc. So that's what a capital gain is. So if you're just starting out, like say you're in your early 20s and you have the option between a couple different investment companies that you're going to look into, it would be more advantageous for you, and it doesn't matter if you're in 20s, you could be in your 50s, it doesn't matter. But when we talk about that compounding growth rate, in your 20s, it's obviously going to be much larger in the long term. But when you're looking at that, that's going to, that should be in the focus. What you should really be looking at are companies that are paying a qualified dividend that is going to be taxed at a lower rate. Okay, so an example of a company that pays a qualified dividend would be McDonald's. It's a US-based company. They have their headquarters here in the United States, and they're paying a qualified dividend. So you're paying lower taxes, less taxes when you're investing into McDonald's. All right, and a way that you can check and see, okay, well, Jake, how do I know if the company that I'm investing in is paying a qualified or a non-qualified dividend? Well, what you can do, you can hop on over to dividend.com and you can take a look at, down here, you look at the ticker symbol that you're interested in, for example, McDonald's, MCD, and then you scroll down here towards the very bottom. This is just one way that you can do it. This is how I personally do it. You scroll down here to the bottom to the dividend history, and you can see, okay, they actually have a qualified dividend. And you can see it's displayed here. All right, the next thing that I want to jump into are non-qualified dividends. Non-qualified dividends, or ordinary dividends, ordinary for your ordinary income. This is the U.S. 2019 tax brackets. Whether you're single, married, filing jointly, separate, you're head of household, this is based off of your income. And if you're investing in a non-qualified or an ordinary investment, this is what the rate that you're going to pay. So this is really important. Say, for example, you're single, you're in college, or you're right out of college, and you're making $35K. You're making $35K, you're only paying 12%. Now, if we compare that to the capital gains tax rate, it really does not matter. You're actually going to be paying zero taxes on this investment versus paying, for example, a 12%. So you're going to have a huge advantage there. You're not going to pay any taxes if you're in this tax bracket, and as long as it's a qualified investment. All right. An example of a non-qualified dividend would be an example of a real estate investment or a REIT, an REIT, real estate investment trust, or, for example, bonds. So if you're investing, and this is important to understand, and we're not going to get into this video, but is assuming that you're investing in a taxable account, not a tax-deferred account. A taxable account would be a traditional brokerage account that you're able to put money in and pull the money out without any implications whatsoever. So not talking about IRAs or 401ks here. Taxable accounts. Here you're going to be paying ordinary income on these dividends from real estate investment trusts or bonds. This is one of the main reasons, a big reason, why I'm very hesitant and very cautious of the allocation that I put towards these type of investment vehicles in bonds or in REITs. Now, if you follow my channel, you understand, you know that I do invest in REITs, also in a taxable account. If you're interested in that, if you're interested in how I invest into REITs, I'll make sure I link in the top right. You can go check out that video. I made a video a couple weeks back on investing in real estate investment trusts. An example of a REIT that you're going to be paying paying out ordinary income, or where it's an ordinary dividend, which is going to be taxed at a higher rate, would be, for example, Realty Income. Realty Income, great REIT, pays out a monthly dividend, but this dividend is taxed at an ordinary or a non-qualified rate. And you can see that down here at the bottom, under qualified dividend, non-qualified. So that means what you're paying here, you're paying your ordinary income tax bracket. So if you're in your 35% tax bracket, say you're making 204K plus here this year, you're paying 35% taxes on this investment, on Realty Income. Versus if you were to buy McDonald's, you're only paying 15%. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, Jake, I'm only 20 years old or 21. I just graduated college. I'm not making that much money anyways, so it's okay. This is where I would be very careful. You want to also plan for the future. Do you plan on making, 39K for the rest of your life? And when these things change, the brackets change every year. But if you think you're only going to be paying making 39K a year, then okay, that's not an issue. But if you intend to make more money, or let's say you get married and you hit the jackpot and your significant other is making over $100,000 a year, you're going to be paying more in taxes. So understanding that from the very beginning has a huge impact on your total return. And on this channel, I'm not talking about any getting a quick win. There's so many channels out there that help you get rich quick. On this channel, it's really a tried and true concept that I'm talking about here. It's a slower path to wealth, but it's a sleep well at night path to wealth. That's really the approach that I take on this channel. So really, really important. This is how I let understanding the tax implications really dictate how I invest. And it's incredibly difficult to forecast or foresee, okay, I don't have a glass ball. I don't know what I'm going to be making in 10 years. I don't know what I'm going to be making in 5 years. But I believe that I'm going to be making more and more money. As inflation goes up, employers are going to be paying more and more. And so I'm going to be hopefully making more money. And so I want to shelter that, what I'm paying to the government in taxes. Really, really important. Okay, so this is how it's done. This is your non-qualified dividend. Important to understand it. There's other videos out there on YouTube that take a deeper dive, a deeper analysis behind the individual concepts of qualified versus non-qualified. This is just an overview, and really my target audience that I'm addressing here on YouTube are beginner investors. Investors that really have maybe just recently pulled the trigger and bought their first investment, or doing initial research before they make their first purchase, or they start their first portfolio. And this is who I'm talking to. Okay, now the last thing, something that doesn't get talked a lot about here on YouTube, are international stocks and how they're taxed. This is so important. There's a lot of great international companies out there. Now, if you were to invest in in ETF, like the Vanguard VOO or the Total Market VTI, you're not going to have any exposure to any international stocks. These are US-based stocks. These are all qualified paying ETFs. The ones I just talked about with VOO and VTI. But if you were to go in and if you were to buy an international ETF or an international stock, these stocks are going to be taxed differently. And this is a chart here of the major countries that the U.S. does business with that you can, that you can invest with. So you'll notice that some of them you're going to pay a 0%. So if you were to find a company here in Hungary that you really like, or India, you're not going to pay any international tax. Now, this tax is what the company is taxing, not the U.S. Okay, very, very important. And so, for example, if you were to buy a UK-based company, you're not going to pay any taxes. However, if you're buying a UK-based REIT, you're going to be paying 20%. If you were to buy a Canadian company, 25%. That's a pretty high price tag to pay for a Canadian company, in my opinion. Switzerland, a lot of great companies out of Switzerland. Nestle, Chubb Limited, insurance company. Great companies. But you have to factor in, if you want to buy into these companies, you're paying a premium in the taxes. You're paying more than a third in taxes to Switzerland to purchase these companies. Okay, so Switzerland, I love it. I've visited Switzerland many times. I used to live out in Europe, in Germany, down in Munich. I would go down to Switzerland quite a bit. I love the country. I love the culture. It's a beautiful place. But if you've ever been to Switzerland, if you've ever been to Europe, you know that Switzerland is the most expensive country to visit. But it's amazing. So I love Switzerland. Talking about Chubb here, how do you know if a company is an international company? There's a few things that you can do. So if you're doing research, you're building out your portfolio, go over here to dividend.com, scroll down to the very bottom, and look under the section Qualified Dividend. If it says unknown, that means in most cases that it's an international stock. That means it's going to be taxed at a different rate. So then what you want to do is you want to reference back over to here and see, okay, well, how is the investment taxed from the country in which it's headquartered at? So that's important. That's what you can take a look at. And if you're unsure of where the company's headquarters is, you can Google it. You can go over to seekingalpha.com. You can go check out the key data section under overview, and you can see, okay, where are they located? They're located here in Switzerland. So if, just as an example, if I were to buy Chubb here, it already has a low starting yield, just under 2%. You have to factor in, okay, you're not getting this full just 2% here. You have to take off 35%, and that's your take-home yield. So that has a major impact on my decision making of how, what kind of companies I'm going to invest in. And another great company, Nestle, that I talked about. Nestle, I'm a huge fan of their products. I love Nestle, but 35%, I don't know. For me, as a dividend investor, where I'm more income oriented, I want that growing dividend, and if it's taxed at 35%. I'm not so excited about that. I know that others are. I know that PPC Ian, he has Unilever. He has other. I'm not 100% sure. He might even have Chubb. He may not, but I know he has Unilever, which is based out of the Netherlands, I believe. And so, if you were to purchase Unilever, you're paying a 15% rate on that dividend. It's not the most. And that 15% is going to be taxed from the Netherlands, but you're also going to get that back in a credit at the end of the year. So you're not going to be double taxed. And that's as detailed as I want to get. Once again, the audience that I'm addressing here are newer investors, so I don't really want to get into the weeds. I think that's the most important thing to understand. Okay, so let's go back here, and the last thing that I wanted to talk about is on how I select stocks based off of the dividend tax. So a few of the examples that I used here with McDonald's. McDonald's is a company that I invest in. It's a qualified dividend. I'm not, as a U.S. resident, I'm not paying any additional taxes. I'm getting the lowest bracket here. Once again, I'm in this 15% range. So this is where I will be paying versus a higher rate in my, because I'm actually a little bit higher than the 15%. And so this is the rate that I would be paying for McDonald's. I do, however, also own REITs, so real estate investment trusts, and I can actually go in and show you here. So I have two accounts with M1 Finance. I have my passive income account and I have my real estate account. And this isn't a taxable account, but I do also invest into real estate. I don't have any international real estate except for the International Vanguard VNQI ETF. Apart from that, I don't have any other international ETFs in real estate. Now, going back over to the passive income here. Now, a few of the examples that I want to share. So I talked a little bit about Nestle. Now, I really considered investing into Nestle directly, but instead of investing in Nestle, I decided to go with Hershey's. With Hershey's, it's a comparable company. I personally, and as you can see here, the holding is not as high. This is because of the target allocation that I've had with M1 Finance. But this is a company that I would preference over Nestle, and I've done that primarily because of the tax implication. If I were to pay zero taxes on Nestle from the international level, I would invest more into Nestle than in Hershey's, personally. Another example would be, Unilever. Instead of investing in Unilever, I've decided, okay, I'm going to invest in Kimberly-Clark and Procter & Gamble. Those are great U.S.-based companies. They're competitors of Unilever in certain product groups. But these two investments, Procter & Gamble and Kimberly-Clark, I'm more interested in them because I'm not going to be paying a international tax on my dividends. So that's some of the reasons behind that. The next example that I wanted to share was on Chubb. We talked about Chubb here. What Chubb is, they are an insurance company. Let's see if this will load here. There we go. Property and casualty insurance based out of Switzerland. What I've done, instead of going with Chubb and paying the 35% tax, international tax, what I've done is I've decided to invest in Travelers, TRV, the Travelers company. And with Travelers, it's a comparable company. Once again, if I had the option, if Chubb was based in the U.S. with all of their fundamentals, I would consider, maybe not necessarily replacing it with Travelers, but adding it to my portfolio as well. But for me, as a dividend investor, I've chosen to invest with Travelers over Chubb simply because of the international tax. And it's important that you understand that. If I would have invested in the Chubb years and years ago versus Travelers as a U.S. resident, I would have a diminishing return because of those taxes. And that's why I've chosen to invest in this company over the other company based off of the tax implication. Alrighty, everybody. So I hope that this was informative. I hope it wasn't too much. Once again, I'm talking to newer investors, beginner investors here. This is really all information that I wish I would have known when I first started out in my early 20s. And I think I would have made a lot fewer mistakes going through this process, looking back, had I known these basic fundamentals around taxes. It's not the most fun topic to talk about, I know, especially if you're a new investor. It can be a little bit intimidating. I think a lot of people, they decide, okay, this is just way too much for me. I'm just going to put all of my money into an ETF and not even think about it. You know what? For most people, that's actually probably a good idea. That would make most sense for most people. But if you're looking to get a little bit more into investing, you're interested by the topic, and you're interested, okay, well, how can I maximize my returns? Understanding the tax implications is a great start in maximizing your overall return on investment when investing in the dividend-paying companies. All right, everybody, that's everything that I had for you today. I'm really excited to to continue sharing my journey here on YouTube. If you found value in the video, I'd ask you please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. I share pretty much every single week updates on my portfolio. I talk about different topics that I find are relevant for my wife. So for those of you that are tuning in for the first time, my wife is actually from Europe. She's from Germany. I met her while I was out there. I was out in Germany for almost 10 years. And long story. I can share that journey in another video. But long story short, my wife is from Europe. She's a permanent resident here in the United States. We both live here in Texas. And another reason, part of the reason why we decided to move to Texas, because there's no state income tax. Another benefit, it's incredible how much, the tax implication can have on your life decisions. We moved from Colorado down to Texas, partly because of the state income tax and other reasons for job opportunities and so forth. But when I'm sharing my journey, when I'm sharing topics like this, I'm really, when I talk about these type of things, I think of, okay, if I were to address my younger self, or in this case, addressing my wife, who really is not financially literate. That's not meant as a derogatory term, but it's really just she's not informed. And when I share these videos, I'm really thinking about, okay, how could I help her? And I think a lot of people are like her out there that are just getting started. And that's really what I'm doing here on YouTube, and I really enjoy it, and I've been doing it for a couple of months now, and I really appreciate all the support. There's a great community out here. There's a lot of great content providers out there. I personally, I'm not a flashy YouTuber. I'm not a guru editor, so I apologize if my videos are a little bit clunky, I guess you could say. They're not the flashiest. But I try to make the content relevant to the audience that I'm talking to, and that is your newer or beginner investor. So I'm not going to keep rambling here. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Subscribe, and I'll talk to you in the next video here. Bye-bye.